Manila, the capital city of the Philippines, one of the most populated metropolises in the world. Each day, 15 million people pass through Manila and adjacent cities. 40,000 on every square kilometre. More than in Paris, Mumbai or Tokyo. Every day they commute to work, stuck for hours in horrible traffic jams, inhaling smog produced by several million cars. Because of the huge number of cars, Metro Manila is one of the most polluted places in the world. Even so, it attracts waves of immigrants from the province every single year, searching for work and a better future. In Manila, global companies find a cheap English-speaking workforce. While the capital accounts for 90% of the country's gross national product, a fifth of the population still lives in poverty, staying mostly on the streets or vegetating in the suburbs. Poverty, overpopulation and smog are not the only problems of this city, one of the world's largest capitals. For years, the threat of imminent destruction has been hanging over Manila, a threat which is caused by the country's specific location and rapid climate change. Scientists have identified the Philippines, and Manila in particular, as one of the most vulnerable places in the world with regard to natural disasters. Threats of typhoons, tsunamis, floods, extreme heat, landslides and fires are part of the everyday lives of Filipinos. There is no way to magically make Manila less susceptible to natural disasters. At most, all we can do is warn against them. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology, PHIVOLCS, monitors volcanic activity and assesses the risk of earthquakes, tsunamis and other natural disasters.
Essentially, the Philippines among countries in the world is ranked number 3 in terms of exposure to various natural hazards. If we look at the Philippines, the country is at the western side of the Pacific Ocean, and that would mean that tropical cyclones or typhoons generated in the Pacific would cross the country. Aside from that, we're also part of the Pacific Ring of Fire, where we have many active volcanoes, around 24, and a lot of earthquake occurrences. In the past 400 years, we have suffered around 100 damaging earthquakes. All of these need to be prepared for.
And because of the geographical position of the Philippines right in the so-called Pacific Ring of Fire.
This year has been peppered with a string of earthquakes, most with strong degrees and intensities. PHIVOLCS located its epicenter in Castillejos, Zambales, with tremors felt in Metro Manila.
Over the past 2 decades, the capital of the Philippines has been affected by over 550 disasters that have together claimed thousands of lives, making Manila one of the worst places to live on Earth. Natural disasters of ever-increasing impact are a huge threat not only for people, but also for the economy and for the budget of this developing country.
Like for example, now there's a huge typhoon coming in, so your ports, like the one in Manila, they get clogged because during typhoon season you can't bring out the cargo and you can't load them, so they stay at the dock. So now you have more cargoes being just there and you can't move anything. And because of this, we lose more money daily because of the stranded commodities. So all these things, we now have to take them into consideration in our budget. So as a developing country, it's very hard for us and challenging because aside from allocating budget for our normal day-to-day activities, we now have to take climate change into account. So we have to double our investments and to invest in more sustainable ones.
It's like when a major disaster happens. Transport is immobilized, houses are flooded, people die, but the biggest threat to Metro Manila is a strong earthquake event.
In the event of a large-scale disaster, the population will simply have to flee the capital. To save the inhabitants of Manila from destruction, the Philippine government has found, as it claims, the perfect solution. It has decided to build a reserve capital from scratch, to which people could move in case of a tragedy threatening the security of residents and the government. The government company BCDA is responsible for the implementation of this project. Its task is to manage the former areas of US military bases and to create in their place new cities to relieve the overcrowded capital.
Just 11 kilometers from the heart of Manila. The vision was to transform the 240-hectare property into the next business and financial capital of the Philippines.
We have not developed other cities that can allow for populations to live in and work in that are green, sustainable, and resilient. This is where New Clark City and Clark comes in. And this is the vision for New Clark City. We desperately need it.
The desperately needed New Clark City is a gigantic project. It is to help attract private investors and create a modern image of the Philippines.
New Clark City is only about 80-90 kilometers away from Metro Manila. I think just in the next 3 years, this place will already change dramatically.
According to the government plan, New Clark City is being built for two main reasons. The first is to unlock the capital and move part of the population. The second reason is the creation of an economic hub located very close to Metro Manila, thanks to which foreign investors and new jobs will appear. An area of almost 10,000 hectares within the Special Economic Zone will be larger than Manhattan. New Clark City, due to the location and construction of buildings, is to be resistant to the effects of typhoon, flood, and the worst disaster, earthquake.
There are no fault lines underneath Clark and New Clark City. Metro Manila sits right above one of the most active fault lines in the Philippines, the West Valley Fault. It is right above it. And if, knock on wood, an earthquake hits Metro Manila, then Metro Manila will have a huge problem because it is right above one of the most active fault lines in the country. In Clark, the closest fault line is about 20-25 kilometers away from Clark.
The entire Clark area where the new city is being built was once the base of the American Armed Forces. Americans chose this place because of its seismic safety and flood resistance. This ideal location is the reason for the decision of the Philippine authorities that by 2030, most government institutions will be moved here, including the President's office and the central bank. The first phase of construction will end in 2022. The whole project will take at least 30 years. The new city will cost a total of $14 billion. For one of the poorest countries in Asia, this is a huge expense. Foreign investors will mainly pay for the giant undertaking, forming public-private partnerships with the government. Perfectly connected to Manila, New Clark City is to be equipped with modern, smart and ecological technologies that will protect against the effects of climate change, providing an environment that is free from traffic jams and smog, which is what Manila suffers from the most.
Some of the green areas will have some eco-friendly resorts, eco-friendly mountain resorts, but most of it will really just be nature, will be untouched nature.
New Clark City embodies the government's vision of the metropolis of the future, a space which is environmentally friendly and resilient. Its creators claim that the buildings are to be built on wastelands and have no negative effects. But the construction site has already been inhabited for years. We meet them at the National Commission on Indigenous People, on the way to the sports centre which is being constructed for the opening of the Asian Games. a gigantic event that inaugurates the flagship venture of the authorities. They destroyed our mountains, razed them practically to the ground to make room for the golf course and all the rest.
And all is broken. Oh, see? I'm Petronila Capis Munoz.
My name is Petronila Capiz Munoz. I am the leader of the village of Sapong Kawayan. These are our areas that BCDA wants to take over.
Here, the house mom is my elder's brother. This here. This is my brother. This is my son, and this one.
We don't know what to do. We are uneducated people, so we ask everyone for help. These lands belong to my ancestors, from the time of the Spaniards to the Japanese. Now BCDA wants to take them and devastate the area. What shall we do? What will happen to us? Petronila Capiz Munoz is the leader of the village in which the golf course is to be built. The ancestors of Petronila, a tribe of the Aitas, were the first settlers of the Philippines. It is in their lands that New Clark City is being built today. Excellent knowledge of the area and the ability of the Aitas to survive in the forest proved to be invaluable to the Americans once stationed here, who in the 60s brought some settlers from the mountains to hire them as civilian personnel at Clark Base. There will be no place in the new Clark for the Aitas. 300 of them got a job building the city, which is not many out of 6,000 employees. The rest must leave the investment area.
But maybe you're talking about a couple of 100 families who will be affected by the infrastructure, the roads that are being built, and also the facilities that are being built. So a lot of them, if they will be affected, we will provide relocation areas for them. If, say, a road will be constructed in that area, so we are providing very generous financial packages, and we are providing them, if they have a home there, we are providing them land for relocation.
We are simple indigenous people whose land was reached by the BCDA. We live here in the mountains, but the areas of our families below, in the meadows, have already been occupied for the construction of a new city. These are the lands belonging to my father, and before that to my grandparents and great-grandparents, who lived here when the Spaniards and then the Japanese came. We've never moved out of here. We've always been here. We can prove that our ancestors were here and that this land still belongs to us. What affects us the most is that we can't even move freely around our own territory. In 2013, people from BCDA came here, asking about everything, but they did not say that they would want to throw us out of here. A government company offers compensation for moving out of the construction sites, but the amount offered to the indigenous people is at most equivalent to the annual crops. The Aitas claim that they will no longer be able to buy similar land elsewhere. We do not want such a financial offer, because what should we do with this money? This is not enough. Maybe for a month, maybe for a year. Anyway, nobody even offered us money. All we know is that they gave their families compensation in the valley below. But we don't want to lose the land that was supposed to serve our children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. Money is easy to spend, but the land stays forever. I don't want them to force us out of here. What happens next to people from my tribe, with no education, no land, no future? That's all I can say. The local newspaper, The Inquirer, published the results of a study of Filipino university researchers who spent half a year with the Itas tribes, and they confirmed that the city expansion area overlaps with the estates of several tens of thousands of Itas. The problem is that not everyone has official documents confirming their ownership.
The most important point that was raised in the project was that there were thousands of people who were going to be displaced by the project. At the time, the BCDA was already presenting a map that covered the boundaries, supposedly, of the new Clark City. And they were claiming that there are no ancestral lands or ancestral domains that will be covered by the project. But when the research team conducted a counter-mapping project in which they tasks the communities to identify which areas are theirs, which properties and which lands, which water bodies belong to their communities, they were able to find that these community lands, these community properties actually overlap with a lot of the areas in New Clark City.
Paano nila nalaman kung bakit walang katutubo dito?
Investors claim that this area is not owned by anyone, that there are no indigenous people here. How can they claim we're not here? That nobody lives here? We are not bees who came for a moment. They keep saying that nobody is here, and that's why they can build a new city here.
The BCDA is trying to project that there are no ancestral domains or lands that are owned by indigenous peoples along the area. The problem with sticking to that is it reduces the conflict into something technical. The tribes people that we've talked to, they've been there for generations, well before even the Spanish occupation and the American period. And these are areas that, of course, do not have records. They don't have paper trail to prove their ownership except for their own written history and their spoken history.
We filed for legal recognition of our ancestors' land ownership in 2014, but officials ignored it. For 5 years, they did not make any decision on this matter. They can only press us to get out of here.
Sorry, ma'am.
Who will take the Itas' place in the new city? New Clark City will hold just over 1 million people. Others will still be looking for work and a future in Manila. Like Kay, who came to the capital at the age of 16. She earned money for her studies. Today, she works at the outsourcing center and helps foreigners develop their businesses in the Philippines.
I came from the province, and the main reason that I was here in Manila and I'm currently living here is to find a job. I started the career having a call center job. I become a TL, I got promoted. So I am so lucky that I am currently living here because of my current job now. It's really not easy for us to live our life in our daily life, especially if we are commuting or we need to travel from our house to our work, because we all know that Philippines are has this heavy traffic issue. So in order for us to make sure that everything will be okay and we will be on our work on time, then we need to sleep early and we need to wake up early. When I left home like 8 a.m. in the morning, I can tell that I will be home like 12 midnight. That's with the traffic and that's with all the job that I have.
Kay managed to organise her life in Manila. She even works in an NGO helping those who are not as lucky as she was. It collects funds for scholarships for poor youth at charity concerts. These young people, perhaps, will someday seek their fortune in a new city, if only the project is developed.
The new Clark City is an attempt to fix a lot of problems, but also to show that a different pathway can be done. That would be a mistake if we neglect Metro Manila, because Metro Manila is an economic engine of the entire country. And building a new city won't solve the problems of Metro Manila, because people congregate in places where jobs and income can be produced. So a new Clark City that doesn't produce the jobs and businesses will mean that people will go elsewhere and find where the jobs are. So I think it always has to come together, and we always need to look at things as a system, not in terms of fragmented projects or individual activities, but we need to think in a systemic way.
Even the author of the new Clark City Master Plan has no illusions that the new city will become an alternative capital.
The great thing about what the key owner, the BCDA, the Bases Conversion Development Authority, what they're trying to do with New Clark City is not to solve all the country's problems, but to be a catalyst so that other cities and other areas can follow along. It's setting a standard. With New Clark City, yes, there's a lot of talk about decongesting Metro Manila, and it will do some of that. But more importantly, it's a piece of future readiness for the whole country, because so many countries around the world are facing similar challenges. Urbanization, global competitiveness. What role and what position do cities have in tomorrow's marketplace when AI, robotics, all these are changing our working landscape? And Philippines, with almost 10% of its GDP in business processing offices, is facing that in a very visceral way. It's very tangible. What happens in 5 years or 10 years when all of these jobs that are fueling the economy, when they all change?
Cities such as New Clark City are therefore to become the factories of the future. Even if they don't solve most of the residents' problems, they are certainly great business for investors, who have long benefited from saving the Philippines from the effects of disasters. New Clark City is an opportunity, especially for players from Korea, Japan and China. They have long been fighting for influence in the region and for testing new technologies here, which would be great facilities for similar investments in other countries.
I think there's a lot of interest in the Philippines in terms of investment. Obviously, the economy is doing well, and many businesses are looking at the Philippines as an investment destination. What is important right now is that they invest in the future, not in sustaining what is already proven to be activities that will harm the population or will result in short-term gains.
People are looking for ways to hedge, protect against the risk of trade wars or changes in trade routes, political alliances, and these types of economic zones and new cities are part of the equation, for sure.
The Chinese found the best business opportunities in the Philippines. Their loans and workforce are largely based on the government's Build, Build, Build program, which includes New Clark City investment. It fits perfectly with the Chinese plan to take over military and economic control in the region.
It's an interesting thought about what's the political influence of major infrastructure investments around the world. If we look back, centuries, the British Empire was very much about that. The American period of a lot of investments overseas was also part of securing shores across the world. You could say that what China is doing now and what Japan has been doing in the region is nothing new, and it has been going on for a long time.
If you prioritize private interests, you will have what we have right now, which is chaotic, gridlocked economies that are choking on fumes, that are choking on pollution, because the needs of the few are prioritized over the many.
For the Aitas, politics and business competition no longer matter. They lost their homes for the first time 20 years ago, when the nearby Pinatubo volcano erupted. For many, it was the last day when they were the real hosts on their land. They had to run away from the mountains. It was then that many Aitas began begging, often ending up in the streets of Manila. For them, building new Clark City is like another volcanic eruption, another disaster that there is no way to avoid.